Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Turk's Tips and Tricks. Today, we're going to take a look at the NX measuring tool. As an agenda, very briefly, we're going to talk about geometric solutions, who we are, how we can help. And then we'll jump into our subject, looking at the NX measuring tool. This has been around for a while, but what we've found is that a lot of our customers they've switched to newer versions of NX here recently, and so they're struggling with the measuring tool. So I thought it'd be a good topic. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in, and I'll do my best to answer them during the webinar. If I'm not able to, then I'll just get with you afterwards. My name is Dan Turk, and I'm an application engineer with Geometric Solutions. At Geometric Solutions, the company I work for, we sell the best-in-class software. We sell Siemens software solutions. But we're part of the larger Waltonen family of companies. And here's why that's relevant. At Waltonen Engineering, we have hundreds of designers and engineers. They're using this software. And then at Independence Tooling Solutions, we have a facility where we can build the very things that are designed. So you could say top to bottom, left to right, and every which way around, we've got you covered. The owner of our company, he put it nicely. He said, our ability to successfully partner with our customers comes from our experience in using the tools we sell every day. And that's the key. It's not just that we sell these tools, no, we're using them. So let's get into our subject. Turk's Tips and Tricks, the NX measuring tool. So the question becomes, where is the measuring tool? Well, it's underneath Analysis and then Measure. I just want to point out, with all the tools that we have, if I were to right-click on this, it gives me the ability to add it to my quick access toolbar or any of the border bars. So I'm just going to add it to the quick access. So now it's just right there at the top. If we want to get rid of that, it's just a matter of right-clicking, remove. Another way we can get to the measure is if we just click on the background. Just a left click, and there's measure. So the measure tool, it looks entirely different. If you start playing around with it and it's not doing what you want, just remember you have the ability to reset that tool. There's also a couple of nice little videos for help. So it talks about some simple measurements and so on. So just keep that in mind. Essentially what we're doing though with the measure tool is we're just filling this palette. So we're going to measure, let's say, between two objects. So just as an example, if I measure object 1 and object 2, it gives me a minimum distance, and it also gives me an inner angle. You might say, why is it giving you an angle? Well, if you notice, I have this result filter. So there's distance, there's curve, and angle. And then we've got some face properties and body properties as well. I can simply toggle these on or off. So in this case, I don't really want the angle, I just want that minimum distance. There's a couple other things that you may have noticed when you put a measurement on, and that's that you've got these little buttons here. So what these buttons are doing is I can make this dimension associative, and it's actually going to turn it into an expression. I could say I want to see it. I just want to always see the dimension. And a really nice one, I want to create some geometry. So as an example, we'll turn these on. You'll notice when we turn on the first one, it gives us a couple extra options as well. Making some requirements, or if we're talking about product interface. So that's when we make it associative. So we'll turn those three on and middle click, a couple things happen. On the left, you'll notice we've got the measure. That's probably what we're familiar with. But we also have a folder called measures. And I can expand, and it's showing me the measure, but it's also showing me it a little bit more specifically. We also have a curve in here. And just to show, I'm going to do a quick extrude. So there you can see it created the geometry of that measurement. Now, this could be really helpful if you're working on something that's more complex. Just cancel that. And then I have a dimension, of course. So the measure tool, what it's looking for, as I said earlier, is it's looking to fill objects in here. Now the objects, it could be an object set, but it could be a point, could be a vector, and so on. Now let's look a little bit deeper at this tool palette though. You'll notice angle is now turned off. It's remembering things. I also have this option for hints. What this is going to do is it's going to try to help us make a measurement. So just as an example, if I choose 1, it's telling me, hey, there's no possible measurement you can make. You just chose a center line. But if I choose another, now it's saying, okay, there's your distance. Do you want it projected? All right, for projected distance, you have to use a vector. We'll get into that in just a moment. But that's how the hints are working. If I go into the settings, you can see that we can make them associative, display, and create geometry. You can have those turned on or off ahead of time. So if you recall, when we made that little line there, I did it manually, but you don't have to. We can also send results. So if you think of having that little pop-up where you can copy and paste, well, we can still do that. We can still have an information window. And we also have some preferences. Do you want to display the XYZ? Do you want to change what the units are? Even to the point of changing up the measurements. We're just going to leave it all set to default. But I put a measurement in, hit OK, and there we go, 625. So I can just copy that because I had it sent to the information window, although it didn't save a measurement. This measurement, though, it did save. Now remember, we said that we'd be able to use this as an expression. Let's see if that's true. I'll go to Tools, Expressions. Hey, check that out, a measurement. So that measurement, just make it so we can see, 612, 612, it's P63. So you'd be able to go in, and of course we could change this if we wanted. I'm not very creative, but measurement, you could change the name of it, and then you can use that in other expressions, other parts of your model. Let's look at some other cool things. I'm going to click Measure again. And this time, I'm just going to hold my mouse over a face. Do you see what it did? It shows you the area, the perimeter. And we could say, how useful is that for a face? Well, maybe for this face it's not useful, but how many times have you been working and someone says, what size is that tube? There we go. You could tell them. It's right there. It's radius, 22.5, so it's 45 millimeter tube. Or what's the size of that? 216. So just holding our mouse over, it does give us some nice little options. Interestingly enough, you could simply click on it And it's going to give you those same options. It's just that now you could say I want them to be associative, or I want them to show up. Or for the center, I want to see what's the center point. For our purposes though, we're going to add, or we're going to take a measurement, I should say, from one side to the other. So we've got the first, and if you notice, I'm just adding, as I've said, to my palette. So I'll choose the second item, and it's given me a measurement. And it gives you a couple of different types. So we could get a minimum, or, oops, didn't mean to select that. So I'll just go in and delete minimum, maximum, perpendicular, and so on. But maybe we want to ensure that when we're measuring straight across. So if I go back to my palette, I can choose vector. Now it's given me a distance, but it's projected. It's projected along the vector. This time, if I were to say maximum, well, same thing. It's giving me that precise measurement from the bottom. Let me reset my tool. Let's look at a couple of other different measurement methods. So we've seen free, and just to emphasize, free is just that. We're just taking a measurement between 2 points, 2 objects, and so on. And it could be an angle measurement or what have you. I'll just reset that. And instead, let's try using pair of objects. And what I want to measure here is on these clevises. So there's one. I'll turn off angle. My second pair. And the last. And I'll turn these on so I can see them. So that's using the groups or the pairs of objects. It's just looking for one pair, the second pair, the third pair. The next one we have is a chain of objects. Now I'll go back to this portion of the excavator. I'll change it to point. And I'm essentially just creating a chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice that NX remembers from the last time that I had an associative and I want it displayed. But you can see the chains. So it's just going from one to the next and to the next. What's interesting though is you could go in and we could say, no, we don't want that point. Or maybe I do want to add that one back in. But perhaps it's this point I want to get rid of. Well, as you can see, the dimension then it bridges the gap. And just to show an example, I want to bring this back in. But then I can take and move that point up. So there we have those dimensions. So you can see how well that tool works. The last measurement method is from a reference object. Basically, it's just like an ordinate dimension. So I have my main point. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one. I need to do that again. My second, and so on. So then when we look at these dimensions, you can see it's as I mentioned, it's ordinate, so it's coming from just one side. If we want to take an angle measurement, I would just choose Object, One Face, Second Face. Remember to turn on Angle, and in this case I'm going to turn off Distance, and there I've got my angle. It's nice you can get the inner, the outer, or a supplemental as well. So the same kind of thing, where you can save that information. Now let's take a look at a couple of other types of measurements. So I'm going to choose Measure, and what I want is the entire body. So there you can see it's going to give us the surface, the volume, center of mass, and so on. In this case, I'm going to turn on the geometry. I want to see the center of mass. And you'll notice it's set to Associative. If we wanted this information so we could put it into another document, then we can just choose Show Results in the window, and there we go. But you'll notice we have this measure body, and it's showing me that center of mass. So here's one of the cool things about NX. Let's just say that for this part, I needed to take this one end, this port, and it needs to be extended. So I'm going to just use my synchronous tools, grab these faces, and I just want to move them out. I'm going to exaggerate it out there. And you might say, okay, that didn't look like it worked. Well, just remember it's associative, but it's also a timestamp. So this measure body with this center of gravity, it was for everything up. Let me just drag it down. There we go. Now the center of gravity is moved. What's nice about this is once we move it in the tree, then it can be just about dynamic so that we can make those changes right on the fly, or we can see them made on the fly. So really cool with the ability to make it associative. That way we'll always know where's the center if we were going to make, like a lifting eye for this. There's another thing that we can look at too, and that's this Show Mass Properties panel. So likely on your session, it's turned off by default. So we can turn it on and simply update our mass properties. And you can see all the different properties that we could ever want. It gives us some options to change. We can even export this or change the timestamp order as well. The mass properties, it also works on the assembly level. So if we had a couple of different components and we wanted to see as it goes by an assembly, it would do that for us as well. And with that, we're going to conclude this month's edition of Turks, Tips, and Tricks. As a reminder, we typically do these on the fourth Tuesday of the month, so please mark your calendar. Do you have any suggestions? Is there something that you would like to see? Then please send me an email at dan.turk@goplm.com. If there's anything else that you'd like to know about, then you can email us at my address or at solutions@goplm.net. We've also got this QR code that you can scan where you can learn more about Geo and our upcoming events. At this time, I'd like to thank all of you for your time and for your attention. Have a great day and stay safe.